Morning, everybody.
Morning, Iype.
I'd follow your model with the timing, but so it's an honor to be here for the second time. Thank you, Salman. He's not here. When I saw the topic today morning, ICP, it's something I speak about in every meetings. I don't know whether you would be bored, but I'll be bored. Every week I go on to these meetings and talk about Cisternostomy and ICP. So I'm going to tell you a little about how our journey started and where it is right now. So I'm sure in that course I'll be able to tell you something about ICP as well. About 10 years back, I was a junior consultant. I just finished, and as guys who just finished, you all want to do aneurysms. Aneurysms and skull base is your, the zone thing. So you want to do aneurysms and skull base. So I was in a government medical college. I was working as a junior consultant in a government medical college. And I had my resident calling me during my shopping time. And he said, we've got two cases. One is trauma, another is an aneurysm. So we didn't have any cell phone messages or anything at that time. So he said, I'm sending the angiogram with the driver. So I said, I'm in the shopping complex. So he gives the angiogram to me. So it's an ACOM, it's a clear ACOM. So I said, I'm excited. I said, I will do the ACOM first, and then you go ahead and do the trauma. Who's interested in trauma? So he says yes. And after some time, I get the message that I should be going for this case. I go in. Usually for aneurysms, for WFNS grade 4 and grade 5 aneurysms, you know how they are. A lot of people don't operate on them, but we operate on them with a large flap. And we have to open all the cisterns, and once the brain gets lax, we get to the aneurysm, we clip it. That's the usual protocol. So when I went there was this brain exposed, angry, swollen. So I started my work. I started opening the cisterns. I went ahead and I looked for the aneurysm, and there was no aneurysm. So I looked for over 45 minutes and I couldn't find any aneurysm. And then I asked this guy, hey, what's happening? I mean, there's no aneurysm here. So this guy said, there's this trauma. This is the trauma case. So I said, I mean, what came to my mouth, I mean, I cannot say that here, but I told him, how can you call me for the trauma? I mean, I told you call me for the aneurysm. So how could you post this as the first case? So he said, see, the pupil's dilated. So I had to post this as the first case. And I mean, you came in and you operated. What can I tell you? So, but when I went back, one thing I realized is that when we opened all the cisterns, the brain had come down considerably. The swelling had come down. Earlier, we just used to do a decompressive hemicraniectomy and never treat that as something allied. We never put microscope on those kind of cases. So probably when I was asking for a microscope in this case, this guy was probably stumped, but he didn't see anything. But this was what started cisternostomy. And then I thought, if we could open cisterns for trauma and then get the brain swelling down, we are putting a lot of change into trauma surgery. And you must understand, trauma surgery, trauma is the largest single entity the neurosurgeon has in this part of the world. If you go to Africa, you go to Middle East, you go to India, Pakistan, Nepal, anywhere. Not maybe in United States or Europe anymore, but trauma is a huge thing. I mean, when you talk about things for basilar-tip aneurysms, in a busy center, you do about 4 basilar-tips a year, and you talk about PCP drilling, people, they almost get into very excited states. But you talk about PCP drilling, I realized this, later on in 10 years, what I realized, you talk about PCP drilling in trauma, people say, trauma, PCP drilling? That's something you do 3 times a day instead of 3 times a year, but still people has this stigma of trauma surgery. Trauma surgery means this something base done by residents. And but is trauma that easy? No. Trauma is definitely to handle a swollen brain is not very easy. It's much more difficult than a vasolatome, believe me. So that is how cisternostomy started. And then we started wondering why this works. Why does it work? So then we had to look at what are the types of edema, what are the types of edema prevalent in the literature at that time? And we found that the edema which is seen in trauma is different. So we started researching on that, and we started writing it up, and we have these papers in SNI and World Neurosurgery. We call it the CSF shift edema. So what is the CSF shift edema? So I'm going to tell you ICP. ICP itself is a misnomer. So let us say you have the brain and you have 120 ml of CSF in the base of the brain. These are two compartments which communicate. Now in 1970s, somebody injected dyes which are more than 2000 kilodalton, and they said, oh, CSF doesn't communicate with the brain. That's like saying there's an elephant and the elephant cannot pass through this door, and therefore this door is non-existent. So Iype and Nedegard, through their work, they clearly demonstrated that CSF passes into the brain very fast. And it makes sense too. You know how many times the CSF is changed every day? Do you know? About 5 times. Why does, if CSF was meant just for buoyancy, as a lot of us believe, if CSF was meant just for buoyancy, why would it be changed 5 times? Metabolites? Where? Yeah, I understand, but for the excretion products to come into CSF, the CSF must communicate with the brain. That's exactly what I'm telling you. So we understood that. We started thinking, how does the CSF communicate with the brain? We understood that in the brain, there's a very beautiful way of the vessels going into the brain. They go from outside inside. All the vessels in the brain, they are outside, they go to the brain from the base of the brain. Okay? And around these vessels, there are spaces, and these spaces are called Verschurovin spaces. So we started looking at Verschurovin spaces. And we understood that, you know why we sleep in the night? I mean, I'm sleep deprived now. I'm 48 hours, I have not slept, so I'm feeling really zombie. Why is that? Do you know why do we have to sleep? And you know what happens in sleep? There's a beautiful paper that during sleep, in the night, the aquaporin 4 molecules, they open up these pathways so that the CSF goes in, cleans literally, I mean, in a very simple way, cleans the brain up. So there is this communication. And so let us say that there are 2 compartments. One is the brain and one is 120 ml of CSF. Let us look at the conventional ICP wisdom. The conventional ICP wisdom says that when the brain swells, the CSF must get displaced and the brain must get displaced. But if anybody who has learned fluid physics, or can we turn off the accompaniment, please? Thank you for that. But yeah, so when the brain swells, the CSF must get displaced. Now, if anybody who knows fluid dynamics, can you take 100 ml of fluid, I mean a plastic bag, and press it, and like a balloon or like a sponge ball, can you press it to non-existence? Can you do that? It's impossible. It's literally impossible. It will take you tons of force even to squeeze 100 ml of 100 ml of fluid and make it into 50%. It's impossible. So how can the brain swelling? I ask a lot of people, where is the CSF? The systems are all compressed by the swollen brain. It's not possible. So it's getting displaced. So then I used to ask them, where is it getting displaced? So they used to be stumped at the moment. At first, they used to say, "You used to go to the spinal canal. Can I go to the spinal canal? What is the volume of CSF in spinal canal? No. It's much more than that. About 40 ml. Okay, but if another 80 ml came into the spinal canal, the spinal cord will start infarcting. So where is this 120 ml going? 2 hours after trauma, you're not seeing a single cistern. So where is it going? If I asked a medical student, they would say it went into the brain because they don't know about this study 30 years back saying that the brain and the CSF doesn't communicate. But you ask a neurosurgeon, they'll say it goes to the spinal canal or it gets absorbed into the superior sagittal sinus. No, it doesn't. It goes into the brain, and this is what causes the edema. So, and why does it go into the brain? Again, the question to you is why does it go into the brain? So I'm changing a lot of concepts here. I know I'm challenging a lot of people's beliefs here. So what happens? Supposing there is trauma, what is in severe head trauma? What is the most common thing that happens? Most common thing that happens. This is something that everybody knows. Yes? No. Before all that, in trauma, in head trauma, what happens? No, there's subarachnoid hemorrhage. Okay, in severe head trauma, there's always subarachnoid hemorrhage. So when there is subarachnoid hemorrhage, the cisternal pressure, so the blood is a newcomer into the system, and it is coming at a pressure. It is mostly capillary. It's not arterial. Unlike in subarachnoid hemorrhage in an aneurysm, it's not arterial blood. It's capillary. So the capillary bleeds. The pressure is about 50. It rises. The pressure gradually rises. The cisternal pressure goes to 50. The brain pressure is almost normal. And then there's a gradient between the cisterns and the brain. And what happens? The blood cannot shift into the brain because the Virchow-Robin spaces are too small. So the CSF shifts into the brain. And in 2 hours, you have a completely swollen brain. And then starts the secondary insult. So there's a swollen brain. There's a really swollen brain. And you go and open a decompressive hemicraniectomy. And what happens? That swollen brain herniates out. You are managing the ICP, but is that a correct management? You are causing the brain to swell in a bizarre fashion, causing axon stretch, causing all kinds of problems, and the patient might or might not survive. At the end of the day, you will see a patient who's got a completely swollen cranium. I mean, you've seen that many times. I've seen that many times. So the correct answer to that would be going into the cisterns, open the cisterns to the atmospheric pressure. And in cisternostomy videos, maybe tomorrow, I'll be able to show you that once you open those cisterns, you can literally see the CSF welling up. You have to wait. And it's not easy opening the cisterns. A lot of people have asked me, it's really swelling, so how can you open the brain? That's because not a lot of senior surgeons go into surgery. If any of the residents went into surgery for a WFNS grade 4 aneurysm, or with a Fisher's grade 3, or a Fisher's grade 4 bleed, I'm sure they'll say the same. It's because residents are going for these cases, not senior. Guys who are doing aneurysms very, very rarely go for trauma. And so there is a myth. There is a myth that trauma brain is, you cannot manage it. It's impossible. No. Open cisterns, you can manage it. Not if there is ischemia. If there is ischemia, you do cisternostomy unless you are Jesus Christ. You're not going to be able to save, or maybe whatever God you are, or you're not going to be able to save the patient for sure. But if there is no ischemia, which we have developed a clinical radiological score for this, we have predictive parameters, we have inclusive, we have exclusion criteria. So if you are able to predict that this patient doesn't have ischemia, it's CSF shift edema, you go and open cisterns. I will show you enough and more cases with post-op, pre-op, and 2 days later the patient is sitting up. Okay, so that is that is where we took ICP to. Now the next thing, why, if Virtual Robin spaces are passing, are communicating with the brain, what is the function? What is the other function for this? Then we brought out this paper in SNI. You should probably look at SNI, and now one is getting published in the World University also. You should look at exploring Virtual Robin spaces. We found out that Virtual Robin spaces are very, very important to clean and cool the brain. Now, an interesting thought stream we had, which I don't know, many people here would say madness. Why are the sinuses present? Behind our nasal cavity, why do you think the sinuses are present? People say it was designed because it is a crash sound, or it is to humidify the air, or it is like a crumple sound, so that God decided that when this guy is going to get hit, so when he gets hit, because his brain shouldn't get affected first. Do you think that is the reason why sinuses are there? Sinuses, say, supposing you're very sweaty, you go under a fan. What happens? You humidify the air. But what is the primary purpose? Are you putting on a fan to humidify the air around you? You're putting it so that the latent heat of evaporation escapes and you get cooled. So the sinuses are 2 degrees cooler than the rest of your face. You get a temperature chart and you'll understand that sinuses are cooler. And then you know what? The sinuses are in close proximity with the suprasellar system. So you have CSF in the suprasellar system also getting cooled. You look at the temperature chart, you probably understand. We're getting MR thermometry now. So you would be able to understand that the sinuses, when they're cooled, and you must also understand there's a beautiful paper which says that intubated patients' brain temperature is higher, and they call it shunting. When you don't take breath through the nose and you are intubated, the brain temperature goes higher. It's called shunting. So the sinuses are there to cool the brain too. And why should it be cooled? Because the brain is one of the most active, metabolically and temperature-wise, most active organ. And that's why it should be cool. So we started looking at how the Virtual Robin spaces and the CSF transit through the spaces helps in cooling and cleaning. And then we had another interesting thing, thought that maybe in neurodegenerative diseases, these Virtual Robin spaces are blocked off. And yes, we found out to our utter amazement, we found out that yes, the Virtual Robin spaces are in most of these Alzheimer's, degenerative Parkinsonisms, they are getting blocked. And maybe there is some link between the Virtual Robin spaces getting blocked and development of neurodegenerative diseases. So we are at this juncture. So what started 10 years back as an observation has led us up to this. We don't know how much of this hypothesis will be correct. To look at it and say it's stupid is very easy. But there are a lot of questions which are not answered yet. Will this be an answer? We don't know. We're looking at it, we're trying to run trials, we're trying to design experiments to see whether this could be done or not. And believe me, a lot of people think that you need fantastic lab and fantastic things to do experiments. A fool with a tool is still a fool. You must always understand that. Most of the scientific work in neurosurgery was done without all these fancy equipments. And once these equipments came and statistics came in neurosurgery, right now we know what not to do rather than what to do. So it is very easy for you to start think out of the box. Everybody. I'm talking this because the residents, the medical students, you are the guys who should think out of the box. Who should get out from these normal alleys where, you get trapped in neurosurgery and you start believing this is the truth. So in 10 years, what we thought out of the box, and here we are. We have published papers. We have evidence for a lot of this stuff, and we'd be happy to share this. Tomorrow's talks, we'll be talking about skull base and cisternostomies and the post-operative pictures and all that. But I thought today in the boot camp, I should tell you as to how we started and where we are. Thank you.